Hello and welcome back to another episode of From the Field. I am your host, Casey. I'm an SA based in New Zealand, Wellington. And this is our second stream using our fancy new studio that we built for this. This is awesome. And today we have Ryan with us, which is going to go through an amazing topic of how do you measure digital experiences. As we all know and have implemented, the old A/B testing and everything like that, and how do you actually make sure that the changes you're making actually are having a good positive effect on your end customers or even like metrics that we all have. So just to allow us to get to know Ryan a little bit better, Ryan, why don't you introduce yourself and then also talk through, what was the first programming language that you actually started with?
Hi Casey. Yeah, thanks for having me on the show. Hi everyone. My name is Ryan, and I'm an associate solutions architect with AWS, working in the software D&B segment. Um, I'm just thinking, like a couple of years when I first started programming, I guess Python was my first programming language of choice 4 or 5 years ago. It's been a while, but I've slowly moved away towards like TypeScript and JavaScript now. So there's that today.
It's quite a jump going from Python to TypeScript. Is that because you're now mainly working on different like types of solutions or features?
Yeah, so I think when I first started with Python, it was more like the logic aspect, like just understanding the basics and everything. And then when you move towards TypeScript and JavaScript, I was working a little bit more in the web development side. Um, but the technology is interesting. It was fun to build like front end web pages to see things in motion. So, which is why I made the change actually back in the day.
Awesome. And also, hey, is that Roy? Yeah, Roy and Marilla. It's great to actually have you here watching us. So, Ryan, what actually made you choose this topic? And what do our
So
viewers have, in store for us?
so I guess in terms of this topic, it's something that I've sort of observed from the customers that I've been dealing with. I think as we see customers' expectations go up and higher, it's always better to find ways to make your customer experience a lot better, right? I guess from an AWS perspective, we have this customer obsessed leadership principle. So I thought it's very fitting that we should do something that increases customer experience by being more customer obsessed.
Awesome. So, what are you going to cover today?
So today the topic is going to be about how you can measure digital experience using AWS tools, but I'm also going to cover the customer challenges, what you can expect to get out of it, and also hopefully a quick demonstration of the solution that I've created. So I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully the demo gods are very kind to me today and doesn't break my demo halfway through.
Oh, I'll be, wishing you best luck on the demo god side of things. I've just brought your screen up, so why don't you run us through your presentation and share
Yeah,
your knowledge?
yeah, cool. We'll just get started and we'll just jump right into it. So I'm just going to move my screen. So what you should see is a slide that says customer challenges. But essentially, from an unbalanced report from 2019, what we can see is 70% of consumers say page speed impacts their willingness to buy from an online retailer. So what that means is, from if you have bad end user or digital experience in this case with your web applications, it will definitely affect your business, which includes your reputation, your revenue, and your customer retention, right?
Yeah.
So there is
I
also
think
a need to.
Yeah, I think Google also mentioned that any page load times below or above 200 milliseconds also led to decreased sales, and that was
Yeah,
like a
I
while ago.
remember reading about it as well. I think it was, yeah, 200 milliseconds. Yeah, I think it's a very privileged thing that we have. Like we want things to be faster, right? Which is good, which is always a good thing.
And also,
Um,
someone's called out your Pokemon obsession in the background.
oh yes, yeah, I grew up playing Pokemon when I was in Asia, so I'm a huge fan of the Pokemon series. I actually collect like little nano blocks, so that's yeah something that I do. I guess as a hobby on the side.
Awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, these are some customer challenges. I guess from a developer perspective, you want a complete visibility. So you want some way of integrating your observability tooling. So moving on to the next slide. So I guess, Casey, your question is going to be, why should we monitor digital experience, right? Well, let me share some knowledge with you. So there's four things that we're kind of looking for. So the first thing is observe. So you want to see what your customer sees. You want to be able to spot intermittent issues and see when issues are introduced. You want to inspect those issues. You want to be able to debug them, discover those performance issues. And if you have more distributed applications, that will mean more dependencies. Third thing is going to be response. So you want to reduce your mean time to recovery, right? You want to minimize customer impact. You want to fix these issues, and you want to initiate some rollbacks there if there's an issue that comes up. And finally, you want to validate. So as a product owner or a developer or someone that's interested in launching more new features by being more agile, you want to have controlled launches with monitoring, experiment to identify what the best choice is for your end customers. So today's talk, I'm just going to focus on the digital experience monitoring. So there are three tools that we're kind of looking for or looking at today. So the first one is going to be CloudWatch Synthetics, where we monitor web applications 24/7 using modular, lightweight canary scripts. The second is going to be CloudWatch Run, which is a real user monitoring feature that get insights into actual end user experience. And CloudWatch, evidently, one of my more favorite services here. It's kind of like feature flagging, and you're able to safely launch new features and validate web application choices by conducting these online experiments. And I guess one more slide before we move into the chunk of it. These are the suite of services that we have with CloudWatch. So today, the focus and the scope is just going to be on digital experience, but we also have other application observability services like Service Lens, X-Ray, Container Insights, but also infrastructure, right? So alarms and dashboards, metric logs and traces that you get with CloudWatch. And this all ties in really well with the observability side of things that you can use as part of your application. Cool. So do you have any questions so far, Casey, before I get moving to the next topic?
I was just actually going to ask you if you knew why it was called the synthetic canary.
That's a good question. I think with anything Amazonian, in terms of naming conventions, I'm not too sure about how they name things, but yeah, no clue, Casey, unfortunately.
I'll give you a hint. It's about the canary in the coal mine.
Canary in the coal mine.
So back in the day, we'll call it. You're showing your age a little bit. Like they would actually take a canary down into the coal mine because as you'd be mining, you would get a buildup of methane and carbon dioxide and all of these other like not so lovely gases. And when the canary either fainted or fell off its perch, that meant that told the coal miners that something was wrong and for them to evacuate the coal mine. Someone
That's
in the
such an
comments will
interesting concept.
probably, yeah, someone in the comments will probably correct that story to make it a little bit, completely factually accurate, but that is really the gist of it. So that's why it's called a canary, because it's there to give you an indication if something's wrong.
I see. So that they kind of use the same concept and I guess brought it to software engineering, right? So you can have like sort of the real world mapping to the fundamentals. Cool. What an interesting story. I think I'm gonna read up a little bit more after this session, Casey. So thanks for sharing that information. Cool. So I'll keep moving on then. Yeah, feel free to put in any questions or stop me, Casey, if you have any questions that you want to pose. But
And that
essentially,
also goes
what we're
for our
going to
viewers
cover.
as well.
Yes, correct. So what I'm going to go through now is CloudWatch Synthetics. So what are some of the customer challenges that we have observed from our customers, right? So the first one is on performance issues. So when you get those performance issues that are affecting your users, you want to know them pretty much like straight away or in real time or near real time as possible. The second one is on continuous app monitoring. So it's good to sort of have that from an end user perspective to spot intermittent issues and understand when issues are introduced. The next is on debugging issues. So as a developer, you want to debug issues once you identified them. And the fourth one is on performance impact, right? So where is your performance being impacted? And how are you going to find it if your application is like super distributed? So what I'm going to talk about now is what is CloudWatch Synthetics. So it's basically a service that you can use to monitor your endpoints every minute or your front-end applications 24/7 using modular canary scripts. And then you'll receive alerts where your application doesn't behave as expected, right? So if you have, for example, broken or dead links, step-by-step task completions, page load errors, you can get that with CloudWatch Synthetics. So there are three things here. The first one is on website and API endpoint monitoring, so availability and latency, how quickly your websites and APIs are working. Outside end monitoring, so client side, which is connected to your infrastructure through tracing integration with X-Ray and Service Lens. And finally, continuous monitoring. So as I mentioned in the previous slide, you're able to sort of get that example of what your end user traffic is going to be like, even when you don't have end users using your web applications. And the cool thing about this is your app can be anywhere. It can be on-prem or it can be on AWS. It doesn't matter. So I'm going to cover quickly how CloudWatch Synthetics works. So you have CloudWatch Synthetics sort of sitting there in the AWS region, and you have a Lambda function that's basically works as a provision canary, right? So when you have identified certain issues or things that pop up or things that don't behave as you expected, what you can do is you can run automated actions through EventBridge. And through EventBridge, you can do custom actions, right? You can do rollbacks to previous versions that work or custom Lambda actions that change things. You get alerted through CloudWatch metrics, create CloudWatch alarms, use SNS to let your developers know through email, through mobile phone, through SMS. Or if your application is super distributed, you can have Service Lens that monitors your X-ray lenses. And the cool thing about CloudWatch Synthetics is it stores everything in the S3 bucket. So you can also look through those through the CloudWatch logs. Yeah.
One addition I'll say to this is that because it does use SNS, it means that it can also push to any custom channel that you have. So one of the most common ones we see is to push it through to Slack. Because generally if something is happening with a canary, it's quite urgent. So therefore it gets that extra level of response.
Correct. Yeah, I forgot to mention, yeah, there's like custom channels that you can include as part of that SNS as well. So thanks for the call out, Casey. Always good to have you looking over my blind sides.
Okay, although that being said, was it Anne Frax? Awesome name, by the way. Just like has also mentioned that this is a really beautiful PowerPoint. So you've outdone yourself.
Oh, you're too kind. Anthrax, thank you for that. Cool. Okay, so what we're going to move next is we're going to talk a little bit about the use cases with CloudWatch Synthetics. So as I mentioned before, proactive monitoring of your endpoints, so the availability and the latency of that. Easy web testing. So as a developer, as an engineer, you want to find out when exactly your website is going to be impacted and for how long. And the cool thing about Synthetics, actually, I just found out the other day, is it gives you these screenshots that you can look at, but also gives you logs and web requests from your site at any point in time. If you have SLAs and SLO contracts, now this is a big one. So when your APIs fail to meet their SLAs, you can get that data to help you debug that issues, right? Again, reducing that mean time to recovery. Visual regression monitoring, so see what your web pages look like at any point throughout time, and then you can find some regressions. And finally, proactive alerting. So when your canaries fail, like as in, I guess going back to your point, Casey, if your canary faints in the middle of like the mine, you want to know straight away, right? You don't want to look at it later when you're like about to faint. So you want to be notified as soon as your canaries fail so you can quickly respond and address those issues. Now we're gonna cover like a couple of quick steps. So it's very, very easy to get started, which I'll show in the demo very later on. There's like readily available blueprints. Here we have heartbeat monitoring, API canaries, which I've used, broken link checker, which uses a web crawler to find out if your links are broken, canary recorder, graphic user interface workflow builder, and some form of visual monitoring, which I've also used in my demo. So that'll be cool to demonstrate. And the cool thing is once you've created those canaries, you'll be able to get sort of a one-page view of the statuses of that canary. So in this case, we have like a couple of passes and fails, which I'll talk through later on. It'll be cooler to see it in action. And for developers, you can debug using canary data. So we have HAR files. I think it's HTTP access record files, and it shows you like all these like status codes, what's taking a long time, what APIs are being called, etc. Cool. So now we're going to move to a quick demonstration. So here is my Amazon console, and what I've got here is synthetic canaries. And I've got 3 canaries here that I've previously created for the purposes of this demo.
Can you
But just
increase your font size?
Oh, yes. Is that better?
Yes, it looks good for me. Anyone that like it needs a little bit bigger, just call out in chat.
Yeah. Cool. So just to quickly showcase how easy it is, what we're going to do is create a canary. And in this case, we can create a heartbeat monitoring URL. So what I've done is prior to this session, I deployed a website, which is basically cute pets seeking for a little home. So for your case, Casey, I know you're a huge
awesome.
cat person. We have cats here for you to take home if you want to. I think $79 is the adoption fee, but for you, I'll be happy to shout you that.
That's
that price.
Quite cheap. I think my cats cost me like $200.
$200. Yeah. Yeah, we'll dive a little bit into that later on, Casey. I'm curious what you're paying for. So here's the website, and what we're gonna do is I'm gonna copy this link here. I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna say heartbeat on link. And for the application URL, I'm going to just put that as my URL. And what we can see here is the JavaScript code that is being run to basically do a heartbeat check, right? It's basically a health check. And what I can do here is schedule for it to run continuously. I can run it every minute. I can schedule the canary to run at certain times during the day, or I can trigger it manually and run it once. So it depends on how quickly or how often you want to run it. You can set your data retention strategies here. Default is 31 days, and where you want to store that data. I'm going to leave everything else as default, and I'm going to create the canary. So it'll take a minute to create, so we'll let that finish creating, but we're not going to wait for it to run because it's going to take like another minute or so. But what we will do is look at other results that I've previously created.
For the magic of doing it previously.
Yeah, you got to have a backup plan. So I'm just going to let that build out for a little bit, but I'm going to open up a new page and go to the synthetic canaries dashboard again. So there's going to be 4 here. There's going to be no data, obviously, because we just created it. But what I want to highlight here is it's the same thing, pet site heartbeat and a UI canary. And if we go into these ones, we can see how often these canary runs have passed, have failed, and it even gives me like a filtering thing. So if all I care about is what happens in the last hour, I can filter that by hour. It also gives me like issues, right? So let's say, for example, this one that has previously failed, I can just click into it. I can scroll down and it will tell me what's failed. So in this case, the first step is for them to go to the website. It's failed to load that URL and gives me that destination URL. It also gives me a screenshot of why it's failing, and I can see that this is what is expecting. But again, this is expected behavior. I'm like doing like a little thing at the back end where it fails like 25% of the time, so I can get like this data here. Logs. So if I'm a developer, it gives me like a centralized place to find the logs. So it gives me information. It tells me what the error is. So it's easy for me to go and debug that issue. And as I mentioned before, the HTTP access records here, it tells me like how long it takes, what the response is, what the status code is, and what APIs are being called here. So that's the cool thing about Canaries. And I guess that's from a pet site heartbeat one. But if you're doing like UI testing, you can also do that here too. So in this case, we have a navigate to URL, which is almost the same as a heartbeat, and then some custom actions, right? And if we go to screenshots, it will show me what steps it has taken based on, whatever I've configured it to do. So it's gone and it's been successful and it passed everything, and we get a availability at 100%. Cool. That is basically CloudWatch Synthetics. Let me see. Oh, there we go. So it's very quick. It's passed. So thank you, demo gods. And yeah, we can see that it's been available, but there'll be like 25% of the time it will be unsuccessful. Cool. So we'll move back to the slide. Any questions from the chat, Casey, or yourself?
No questions so far. I do have one question because you mentioned the fact that it can navigate to links and do custom actions. Is that a way that you can do like a very crude automated testing?
I guess it depends on your use case, right? Like, because like if you're gonna change things here and there, like having like a I guess hard coded, is that correct? Like crude hard coded way of doing things is probably not my suggestion, because as you change things, things will move around. So you want to be a little bit more flexible, right? And just do things by document ID, etc. Cool. So that's CloudWatch Synthetics. Now we're going to move into the second part of how you can measure digital experiences, and that's going to be on CloudWatch Real User Monitoring, so CloudWatch RUM. So again, we're going to go through the same structure. We're going to first talk about the customer challenges. So as a product owner or a developer, I want to understand my actual user experience, right? What is happening in the last mile when my users are doing this stuff on my web application. And this leads to capturing those last mile issues, right? And this includes things like DNS resolution and connection time. Quantifying an issue. So is it happening anecdotally? Is it only happening to one person, or is it happening to a group of people with a certain device or a certain geolocation? So you want to find out if it's more prevalent than expected. Finding correlation in data. So you need to correlate this data with some form of other application monitoring. And finally, the most important thing, which is improving customer experience. And we want to reduce customer impact for any issues that come up. So again, debugging those issues and reducing that mean time to recovery. So, Casey, your question might be, what is CloudWatch RUM? Well, CloudWatch RUM helps developers and DevOps engineers optimize end user experience through client-side data on application performance in real time. So the cool thing about CloudWatch RUM is it complements really well with the synthetics data to give you a complete picture of your application health. So it gives you client-side telemetry, helps complete that end-to-end monitoring in an automated fashion. You can correlate that with other resources like X-ray and Service Lens. Helps measure user impacts, and from there you can analyze the results afterwards, such as the sessions that impacted, and then using those results you can deep dive and understand if it's more prevalent in a geolocation, browser, or devices. And debugging, it's made really easy, a single pane of view, ready access to all these error messages, stack traces, and user sessions. And I'll showcase this in the demo, actually. It's really, really cool to see all of that in a single pane of view. So just a final comment here, together with synthetics, RUM will also help application developers and DevOps engineers optimize end user experiences. So I'm just going to quickly cover how CloudWatch RUM works. So on the slide here, you can see that on the left side, there's the web browser. And what you need to do is from the CloudWatch RUM perspective, you're going to go in, you're going to create an app monitor. It'll give you a HTML header, right, that you can put in your applications. And then all you have to do is just put that into the header of the JavaScript code, and it'll collect the performance telemetry, including this includes navigation events, JavaScript and HTTP errors, and the client-side performance metrics. It'll collect all of these information from this side, pipe that into CloudWatch RUM, where you can analyze the data, and then you'll be able to visualize the data using CloudWatch RUM, and then derive insights which will help improve your application's client-side performance. And similarly to CloudWatch Synthetics, you can have a CloudWatch alarm that alerts you when things are not behaving the way they are expected. Cool. Any questions here, Casey, or the chat? Is there any questions from the chat?
No, we're all good. I was just giggling to myself because you said you might have a question like, what is CloudWatch RUM? And that was really actually my question. Because this is that's the first I've actually heard of CloudWatch RUM, and evidently, so I am listening quite intensely as well.
Cool. That's really cool. Yeah, I think it's like, because when you hear observability, you usually hear things like CloudWatch, logs, alarms, dashboards. But I think this one,
and X-ray,
and X-ray, and service lens as well. But from a digital experience side of things, these services were released late 2021, early 2022. So it makes sense that it's quite fresh in the market, and it's good to sort of start using this to improve your customer end experiences. Cool. So what we're going to do is we're going to cover a little bit about the use cases of why one would use CloudWatch RUM. So if you're using Amazon CloudWatch Synthetics, it's a very good complement to that because it allows for front-end metrics applications, but also augmenting the back-end metrics in CloudWatch. So it monitors your front-end application performance. So issues such as your JavaScript errors or your document DOM processing time or server latencies, you can get that information and that data. And you isolate the customer impact radius to the number of users, geolocations, and specific browsers. You get a really good understanding of who's been affected. And finally, debugging made easy, and really access to your error messages, stack traces, X-ray integration, etc. Very simple to get started. So what you do first is you go into CloudWatch RUM, you create an app monitor, and then the app monitor is going to give you like a bunch of HTML header code, and you take that and then you put it into CloudWatch RUM dashboard. You put that into your web application, and then the data is going to start streaming, and it's going to give you that nice visualization on the CloudWatch dashboards. One thing I want to specifically call out is there's a lot of flexibility in this configuration. So if you can see from the slides there, you can analyze a certain number of your sessions. So if it's 20%, 20% of the sessions will be recorded. And also, you can also configure different pages, right? You can include maybe the checkout page, or maybe the browsing page, or your item page. So there's a lot of flexibility in what you want to record, and you can do that with CloudWatch RUM as well. And once you've done all of that, which is quite simple, and I can show you that in the demonstration in a little bit, you can visualize the different performance data, and this includes page load times, HTTP requests, how many errors happen with these sessions, what locations they are coming from. And as you can see here, if you remember those contribution things, I can't remember I think it's GitLab. You can see like these little boxes that tells you like if your sessions are positive, if it's tolerable, or if it's frustrating more than 3 seconds. So going back to your earlier point, Casey, when you say 200 milliseconds, our standard is 500 milliseconds is okay, but more than that is a little bit not okay. And one last thing I want to call out is if you have any errors, you can look at the sessions and recreate the error. And you can also view those stack traces in line with those errors that are happening. Cool. So I've got a demonstration here to showcase. But before I get into that demonstration, what do you have any questions about CloudWatch Run? Seeing that that's like a new service for you, Casey.
Not really. I think you've covered off a lot of the questions that I want to know. I'm actually kind of need to just sit down and have a play around with myself, and also start going through this demo that of yours. I'm sure that will answer a lot of things as well.
Well, if you're here and you're watching the demo, maybe you don't have to play around with it. You can save that time and build things in a much quicker way. And I can show you that right now, actually. So what I've got here is CloudWatch Run. Let's not worry about the data here for now. I'm going to show you how easy it is to create an app monitor. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create an app monitor name, test run app. I'm going to give it some random letters. Application domain, I'm going to paste the same link. Amazon's quite specific, so we're going to delete the HTTP code and the backslash. I don't want to include subdomains. I'm going to record 100% of the sessions, and I want to store my data into CloudWatch Logs account. And for the pages, I want to make sure. Ooh, sorry.
Ryan, just one question actually. Would SSL get in the way of this, or does this handle SSL?
So I was looking through the results before. I think it also tracks SSL results, but for my web application, I haven't deployed it with SSL, so it wouldn't have that data. But I'm pretty sure it does collect that information too.
Yeah, the only reason I asked is because a lot of websites will do the redirect from HTTP to HTTPS. I just want to make sure that it must work with it.
Yeah. I can show you that later on. I've seen that data come through, so it's pretty easy. So yeah, like I was saying, I'm going to collect all the data on that page, and I'm going to add the application monitor. Now, again, it's going to take a quick minute to build. And what we're going to get is the sample code here. So we can do it in TypeScript, we can do it in JavaScript, we can do it in HTML. I won't be copying the HTML code into the web page because it's going to take about 5 minutes for the page to deploy with the new piece of code. But if you remember this little script here, I'm going to show you what it looks like in the page. So if you click on View Page Source, we can see that I've included that script on the top here. So it's doing exactly the same thing, but I've done this the night before, so I can generate some nice data for visualization for the purposes of this demo. So that's all you really need, right? You have the script here. As long as it appears on your head, you're good to go. You can go into CloudWatch Run, and you can basically start getting the data there. So I'm going to close this. I'm going to go back to this page. I'm going to click Done. So this is the app monitor that I've just created. But what we're going to do is we're going to use this one, the test run app that I created last night. And as I said before, we get information about the page loads, right? How many times has this page been loaded since I deployed the application monitor or before the data retention stage? It tells me my average load speed, so 1.2K, not good, not terrible, could be better. Tells me a little bit about my AppDex score. There's an information button here, but essentially it's an open standard that gives a method to report, benchmark, and rate application response time. You can set alarms here, right? So if your page loading speed is taking more than 3 seconds, I want to know why. And I want to know that really quickly, so I can set my active alarm here to let me know. Page loads and loading time, that's usual stuff. AppDex by country, so if you've got your application deployed in multiple locations, it can tell me how long and if it's positive, tolerable, or frustrating. Good to see that there is no sessions with errors, so that's really, really positive. Errors by device, so at the moment, I'm only using my desktop to look at the website, so there's no errors and sessions here. Now, I'm going to go into list view and sorry, I'm going to click actually go into one of these sessions. So here we get to see that little grid. So like, as you can see, there's like a little yellow box here because one of the load times was taking 2.5 thousand milliseconds. And then there's some blue ones here. Some web vitals that tells you a little bit about the average loading time, if it's positive, tolerable, or frustrating, the input delay, how long until your customer uses the application. On average, it's taking me 13.7 milliseconds to interact with the buttons and stuff. And there's like some layout shift here, measures the visual stability. So, when you build a web application, it's going to change from a person's device to another device. And here is the steps and the duration it's taking, right? So when you first go into the website, if there's any redirecting, worker time, DNS lookup, connection, SSL, KC, as you mentioned before, it does track how long the duration is, and if it takes any SSL steps, the time to first byte, how long it takes for the content download, the processing time, the content load, and then how long it takes to load. So we get all this data just by doing that one simple thing, which is to add that piece of code to our header, and that gives us a lot of information. No errors, no HTTP request errors so far. It tells me the sessions. It tells me also when the session started and how long that user was in that session. So really good as a product owner when you want to track how long people are looking at your products, right? So if you're a retail e-commerce store, you want to understand how long someone is spending reading like the content description or buying certain products.
And from my experience, this is invaluable to a lot of SaaS products because you're wanting to know essentially the success rate of the funnel. So people landing, where did they land from, and how long it took them to get through the sign-up process. And if they actually did get through all of it, or if they like left on stage 2, for example.
Correct. Yeah, that's essentially what most SaaS businesses will value, right? Understanding how long it takes for them to convert. Certain like any events that you have here, so like running a performance resource event, etc. Browser devices. It also splits by browser breakdown. So I'm using Firefox like 75% of the time and Chrome 25% of the time. But obviously, this is just me. If more people go and use it, we're going to see a wider range of browsers. It also shows me like average time for each browser and the throughput.
I'm just aware of time. So do you want to, after showing this querying side of thing, do you want to jump back into it and take us through the evidently?
Yes. That's a good call. Thanks, Casey. Yeah. So it shows like user journey. And then you can also choose to add paths as well. But that's essentially CloudWatch Run. It's very simple, very easy to use. All you need to do is just add that piece of code into the top of the header, and off you go. And you start getting data.
This user journey thing that you're just showing right here, I don't know why I'm pointing at the screen when I should be pointing at the camera, but that there is awesome. Like that is something that I'm actually looking for myself as well. So.
Yeah. It gives a really good mapping to where the customer or your end customers are going to go after looking at certain pages and paths.
Yeah,
cool.
Definitely. You want to be able to direct your customers to go to the right links and process. And if you see them doing weird and wonderful loops to go to a very straightforward page, it's generally an indication that your UX is a bit wrong.
Yeah. Also gives you information for the designers, right? So it's not just developers and POs. Your designers can have some information there as well. Cool. So the final service here is going to be on CloudWatch Evidently. So we're going to do the same format here. So again, what are some customer challenges, Casey, that you think people would have that would require them to use CloudWatch Evidently? So the first one is to reduce risk of unintended consequences. So as your customers innovate more and they release features faster, they need to reduce the risk of unintended consequences, right? So if you're releasing a new product feature, I want to know that my users are behaving the way that they should be behaving and not doing something weird. So a lot of our customers, they don't have good feature flagging strategies. So there's a lot of manual processing that they do, right? So by using CloudWatch Evidently, it kind of gets rid of all the manual tasks. And understanding the results of A/B testing. So when you're doing A/B testing, sometimes you get some numbers and things like p-values, etc., confidence intervals. You kind of need like a good understanding of that. But with CloudWatch Evidently, it showcases that to you in a very easy to digest manner. So what is CloudWatch Evidently then? Again, a question that you're probably thinking about, Casey, as well as our viewers. This is a great service for application developers to conduct experiments, reduce the risk, and identify unintended consequences before launching features for general use. So with Evidently, you get two key functionalities. The first one is on launch monitoring, where you can monitor for unintended consequences when introducing new product features, monitor metrics, and then launch the feature. The second one is going to be on experimentation. So that will help you drive decisions using data, and you can remove the guesswork by conducting experiments on different product features, different designs, and then you can get user feedback and then launching that design of choice to production. So I'm going to quickly cover how CloudWatch Evidently works. So you have your users that's going to your application. And first, what you will do is just configure CloudWatch Evidently with feature evaluations. And then the application will serve the required traffic split to your end users. After this, you can gather the events that your users are doing, which Evidently will then analyze and inform you how a specific variation is performing and maintain the number of assignments. And then when you run that experiment, it'll give you statistical analysis to help you make recommendations. Gives you a really rich visualization that I can showcase to you in a little bit. And it complements well with CloudWatch Run. So if you have any performance events to view those performance metrics, it gives you a very good understanding of the overall picture.
And I remember you telling me during the dry run through that it will also work with any custom CloudWatch metrics, right? So you can essentially use any custom indicator of success.
Correct. Yeah, and I'm going to showcase that in our demo in a little bit. So hold your horses for everyone else that's also the same question. We'll go to a quick demo. So a quick value proposition for launch monitoring. So as a product owner, you want to reduce that unintended consequences, right? So you can expose your new product features to a small subset of traffic and then test based on, and then constantly get that user feedback for a small group of users. This helps with limiting that exposure. You can monitor key users and use performance metrics to visualize anomalies, which also includes RUM metrics. And then you can safely dial up or down the traffic depending on how the performance of your product is doing, right? So if your product is getting really good traction with a small subset of users, you can slowly dial that up. So here we can see in the little graph here, it gives like a really good visualization of the results. So traffic is 60%, 40% here. It shows me what's going well and what's not going well. And there's also certain alarms that you can set as well. Tracks button clicks and traffic changes as well. And you can automatically dial up the traffic as you go, right? So initially, maybe you're not so sure about the product feature. You can start with a 50-50 split. And as you go better and better, you can add more variations to more traffic to that variation, and then slowly it'll take over that product feature that you are trying to replace. And finally, the cool thing about CloudWatch Evidently is experiments. You can run some really cool experiments here that we can see, and it'll tell you whether the results are good, better, best performing, worse. And you can see that later in our demonstration as well. So I'm just going to quickly cover some use cases, but this is something that I've already briefly talked about. So traffic splitting to reduce scope, monitoring, getting key metrics, speed to deploy, speed and agility. You want to reduce the time it takes to launch product features, and then an advanced statistics engine. So that gives you information about p-value and confidence intervals, allowing your decision making with data, even when the experiment is in progress. So near real-time statistics. Cool. Now we're going to move to the exciting part, a quick demo of the CloudWatch Evidently. So again, we're going to have the same website. I've created a project here called Pet Food. And what is going to be in this Pet Food is we're going to have two features. One is to upsell products, right? So if I want my customers to donate $1 to the charity that I'm running, I can include that and see how many people click into it. And I can trigger that based on a Boolean. So if I go into this and I click on edit feature, what I've got here is a Boolean, which is disabled and enabled. And by default, it's going to be disabled, but 50% of the time it will be enabled. And this is the text that it will be spitting out. So by default, it will only spit out, are you going to donate $1 to our animal shelter? And then the other 50% of the time, it will say, do you want to add a month's supply of food to your purchase? So before this session, I've just created a launch here where I'm saying 50% of the traffic will have donate $1 to the charity of choice, and the other 50% won't have it. So if I go to my webpage and I click on one of these cute pets that I want to donate, we can see that it appears here. But if I keep refreshing it...
Do you want to increase your text size a bunch?
Yeah, is this
so we
better?
Yep, internet's going very slow for me. All right, that's even my internet. Could be one of the two.
Yeah, no, all good. Thanks for the call out, Casey. But if I refresh this enough times, sometimes it doesn't even come up with that checkbox. But if I refresh it again, 50%, I should expect 50% of the time it will have this text here, donate $1 to our animal shelter. Yeah, so that's feature flagging, and if you want to do a product launch. But what happens if you want to run an experiment? Now, I've finished configuring an experiment here and running that, but what I'm going to try and do in the short time that we have is to create an experiment and see if it works. If it doesn't, we'll just go and look at the results. So I'm going to create a pet food experiment here, and the experiment is going to showcase either this one, donate $1 to our animal shelter, or add a month's supply of food to your purchase. So again, 50% traffic split. And Casey, going back to your point again on custom metrics, here is where I'm going to do my custom metrics. So I'm going to put this as upsell. In terms of the entity ID, value key, and units, these are like your values that you've put through in your code. So I'm just going to quickly call that. And then units, I'm going to measure it in dollars. So I want to see if I run this experiment, am I going to upsell more? And my goal is to increase that sell. So I'm going to create this experiment. Oh, it already is created, the naming convention. So it's going to take a quick while to create that experiment. Hopefully, the demo gods are nice. This is the one last piece of code that I need to run. So it's created successfully. It's going to tell me to do some code variations, and then we can start and analyze the results. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go here, and I'm going to click Start Experiment. And I'm going to just run it for 7 days. So while the experiment is running, we can see a huge live button here. And if I go to my page, we should see this text be a little bit different. There we go. Add a month's supply of food to your purchase. Hell yeah, for $1 more, I'm going to do it. And if I go back and I click on another one, and I refresh it a little bit, it will say donate $1 to our animal shelter. maybe I don't want to do that today. I'm just going to adopt a cute black puppy, and that should give us a little bit of results. So if I refresh this, we might get some results. So just looking at the pet food experiment that we've just created. So the data hasn't been propagated through because it'll take a little bit of time. But from my previous experiments where I've done exactly the same thing, I can see that variation too, where I'm upselling another month of food. I can see a count that goes up and also gives me that dollar value. So on average, in the 10 minutes that I did the experiment, I'm making $15 more by upselling the month's worth of food.
Oh yeah, a
Cool.
whole $15.
Yeah, $15 for 10 minutes worth of experiments. I would love that. That would be so good.
Although I think you're going to be losing a lot of money for a dollar upsell for a month's worth of food.
Yeah, correct. But it's good for people like you, right, Casey, and any pet owners.
Oh, exactly.
$1 to upsell another month's worth of food is very, very, very good.
So if anyone has any questions for Ryan on this, this is like, do chuck them into chat and we will address them. For the time being, Ryan, thank you very much for coming on to From the Field and sharing your awesome knowledge.
No, thanks for having me, Casey. Really enjoyed the session. Yeah, hopefully if there's anything else that I can teach, just let me know.
I'm going to ask some hard questions now because we've already identified the fact that you're a bit of a Pokemon fan. What was your favorite Pokemon game and what's your favorite Pokemon?
Oh, favorite Pokemon game is Pokemon Emerald, the one, I think it's Gen 3. And like if you can tell or you can see, I have a little Torchic. That's my favorite starter. It's a cute little bird.
Bring it closer to the camera. I don't even know what a Torchic is. I'm not that cool. Actually, let me remove this.
There we go. Can you see it?
Oh, okay. Looks like it's what's its element?
Fire and fighting. I think it's fire for the little bird, and then once it evolves, it's fighting fire. But the most non-controversial way of putting it is all of the Pokemon is cool. There's nothing wrong with all of them.
Nah, Gen 1 Pokemon all the way. That's all I'm going to say.
Debatable.
All right, before I start a fight on air, let's again thank you very much for coming on to the show and sharing this awesome presentation. I learned a lot as well, and I think our viewers did. So thank you very much, and for everyone else, Matiwa, and thank you for joining us.